The second book of Samuel, chapter 1. Now it came to pass after the death of Saul, when David was returned from the slaughter of the Amalekites, and David had abode 2 days in Ziklag, it came even to pass on the third day that, behold, a man came out of the camp from Saul with his clothes rent, and earth upon his head. And so it was, when he came to David, that he fell to the earth and did obeisance. And David said unto him, From whence comest thou? And he said unto him, Out of the camp of Israel am I escaped. And David said unto him, How went the matter? I pray thee, tell me. And he answered, That the people are fled from the battle, and many of the people also are fallen and dead, and Saul and Jonathan his son are dead also. And David said unto the young man that told him, How knowest thou that Saul and Jonathan his son be dead? And the young man that told him said, As I happened by chance upon Mount Gilboa, behold, Saul leaned upon his spear, and lo, the chariots and horsemen followed hard after him. And when he looked behind him, he saw me, and he called unto me, and I answered, Here am I. And he said unto me, Who art thou? And I answered him, I am an Amalekite. And he said unto me again, Stand, I pray thee, upon me, and slay me, for anguish is come upon me, because my life is yet whole in me. So I stood upon him and slew him, because I was sure that he could not live after that he was fallen. And I took the crown that was upon his head, and the bracelet that was on his arm, and have brought them hither unto my Lord. And David took hold of his clothes, and rent them, and likewise all the men that were with him. And they mourned, and wept, and fasted until even, for Saul and for Jonathan his son, and for the people of the Lord, and for the house of Israel, because they were fallen by the sword. And David said unto the young man that told him, Whence art thou? And he answered, I am the son of a stranger, an Amalekite. And David said unto him, How wast thou not afraid to stretch forth thine hand to destroy the Lord's anointed? And David called one of the young men, and said, Go near and fall upon him. And he smote him that he died. And David said unto him, Thy blood be upon thy head, for thy mouth has testified against thee, saying, I have slain the Lord's anointed. And David lamented with his lamentation over Saul and over Jonathan his son. Also he bade them teach the children of Judah to use the bow. Behold, it is written in the book of Jasher, The beauty of Israel is slain upon thy high places. How are the mighty fallen? Tell it not in Gath, publish it not in the streets of Askelon, lest the daughters of the Philistines rejoice, lest the daughters of the uncircumcised triumph. Ye mountains of Gilboa, let there be no dew, neither let there be rain upon you, nor fields of offerings. For there the shield of the mighty is vilely cast away, the shield of Saul, as though he had not been anointed with oil. For the blood of the slain, from the fat of the mighty, the bow of Jonathan turned not back, and the sword of Saul returned not empty. Saul and Jonathan were lovely and pleasant in their lives, and in their death they were not divided. They were swifter than eagles, they were stronger than lions. Ye daughters of Israel, weep over Saul, who clothed you in scarlet with other delights, who put on ornaments of gold upon your apparel. How are the mighty fallen in the midst of the battle? O Jonathan, thou wast slain in thy high places. I am distressed for thee, my brother Jonathan. Very pleasant hast thou been unto me. Thy love to me was wonderful, passing the love of women. How art the mighty fallen, and the weapons of war perished. At first glance, the story that is told about this man who says he's an Amalekite seems to be very cruel on David's part, unless you remember back a chapter where Saul was not killed by the Amalekite. Saul fell upon his own sword and died, and his armor bearer, the armor bearer was sort of like the personal bodyguard of whoever he was there. In this case it was the king, but many men had armor bearers. And the armor bearer wasn't going to kill Saul himself because he didn't want to kill the Lord's anointed. He was afraid to do that for fear of God taking some revenge on him because he was the Lord's anointed king. And the Amalekite, the fellow who ran to David, had nothing to do with Saul's death. The fact that he had the crown and the bracelet that was on Saul's arm would indicate that in all likelihood he was a looter and had found the crown and had found the bracelet, knew that David had been anointed to be the king, as pretty well everybody in Israel had known, and everybody around there would have known, and thought to go and take them to David and ingratiate himself, impress David with his story and his sincerity of dispatching the king, so that David would be impressed with him and quite possibly give him something for having killed the king and for having brought him the crown. And this man didn't have a clue how David viewed King Saul or how much he loved Jonathan. Now, the love that David had for Jonathan was unquestioned. His mourning for Saul was very sincere. The story that this Amalekite told was to David, and is to us, if we examine it in depth, a fiction. None of it is coherent, none of it is cohesive, none of it sounds or is likely. And so David said to one of his young men, one of his 600, kill this man, because David would have been entitled to inspiration, would have been entitled to some knowledge that this story that this man was telling him was exactly that, a story, a fiction. So we now have the situation where Saul is gone, Jonathan is gone, David is the anointed king, and David didn't do anything to stop Saul from being king. That was the Philistines and Saul himself. And so now David really is the anointed king, and the Philistines are victorious, and David has 600 men, and he faces some real challenges. We'll find out how he handles them. In our life, we sometimes are going to hit a situation like that, where people who may have some negative influence in our lives seem to be victorious for a while. But we need to remember that Heavenly Father, in the long run, is quite capable of helping us out and will. And our job is to live righteously and worthy of that help. And the thing we can learn from David's story is that when David lived righteously, he was worthy and received a lot of help. And that's the story, that's the lesson we can learn from here. Yes, there are things that are going to happen in your life, and many of them are not going to be pleasant, because that's the nature of earth life, and because we have to deal with people and personalities and all the challenges that come. But we are eternal beings, and Heavenly Father understands that. And He is more patient in developing us sometimes than we would think necessary or helpful. But He does a wonderful job of looking after us. And if we have the faith in Him, He will do that. David had that kind of faith.